Now, the first yes to integrating an innovative product on any project can actually be the toughest. So our next panel is going to explore collaboration between asset owners, delivery team, contractors, and suppliers. And of course, as we've been saying, collectively, we can make that happen. Our moderator for this next panel, Lissa Van Camp, is the Executive General Manager for Land, Planning, Environment, and Sustainability for the Suburban Rail Loop project. The project is expected to deliver a 90-kilometer rail line connecting every major train service from the Frankston line to the Werribee line via Melbourne Airport, and is a major player in supporting the use of recycled and lower carbon materials. Lissa, if I could please invite you to join with me on stage, could you please make Lissa welcome?
Thank you. I don't know if to say, am I on mute? Can you all hear me? Yeah, great. Well, as the topic has indicated, this is about taking an innovative idea and turning it into a reality. So we've got three excellent panellists with us today who have actually taken products from that germ of an idea into a reality. So please welcome Bo. Bo is from a sustainability manager from LX. I should look at my notes here. We've got Matthew James, managing director from Polyrok. Welcome. And we have John Scaife, head of engineering, interface rail.
Afternoon, everyone.
Engineering. Now, for everyone in the audience, you do have a QR code on your desks. It's not a desk, on your tables. If you have any questions for the panellists as we go through the panel, please lodge those. And if we get time at the end, we will certainly put those to the panellists. Before I actually throw the questions towards you, I just want to say, from my experience, I do know that challenging the norms can be quite difficult. Our project, Suburban Rail Loop Authority's SRL East, was the first project to actually produce a digital, fully interactive EES. And to get that yes was not actually as easy as you think. And it's crazy because it really is just at the very outset of a project. It's at the planning phase. And we initially faced some resistance. We faced some no's. And I'm just looking around the audience for some of my team members because I know they faced the no's as well. Hands up, where are you? Thanks, guys. Always like to know where you are. And we kept on going back with information and data so that when we got the no's, we could come back and say, well, hang on a minute, what about X, Y, and Z? Have you thought about that? And the no's eventually became a reluctant yes. And the reason I bring this up is not because it's about recycled products, not because it's about the great work that ecologiQ is helping us to deliver on, but because it was the mindset at the very outset of our project to do things a little bit differently. As I was being introduced, you did hear that we're delivering a 90-kilometre rail. The first part is 6 brand new underground stations and 26 kilometres of tunnels that will take people from Cheltenham to Box Hill in just 22 minutes. It's amazing. But it's not just that. We're also building 15 kilometres of walking and cycling paths. We might be upgrading some. I might have exaggerated it slightly. And all of that is actually going to take 600,000 cars off the road, which is a phenomenal achievement for a rail project. In addition, we've also mandated a whole range of incredibly innovative, ambitious sustainability targets through the design, through the construction, and through operation. We've worked with ecologiQ. We're looking at 95% reduction in our waste, our construction waste from going to landfill, so we're diverting that much. And of course, we are looking at recycled crushed rock, and we're already using it. We're in construction at the moment, and we're doing it. So the project is thinking about I'll get to you in a second, Bo. The project is thinking about sustainability in pretty much everything we're doing, and this is my segue.
Perfect.
I'm assuming, with you being the sustainability manager, sustainability is at the forefront of everything you're thinking about with the Western Program Alliance as well. So did you want to talk about some of the successes and things that are exciting you on that project at the moment?
Thanks, Lissa. I would love to, thank you. And so the Western Program Alliance, for those who don't know, we're actually part of the Level Crossings program. So I work for McConnell Dowell as the constructor in that alliance. And I guess in my role, I thought I'd try and put a little list together. I sort of had about 50 things, but thankfully we're not going to do 50. But I did write down a few because otherwise I'm just going to forget them. So I've kind of got 6 things I just want to quickly cover off on, and they include some of the success things. And actually the first thing is I want to agree with Kevin Devlin this morning, is the program really matters. It's absolutely tantamount to success. Every project, and I'm agreeing with him, I don't particularly like the word project, is a pearl, and we're a string of pearls, not one. And I think that is absolutely exemplary. As an illustration, Tyre Stewardship Australia were up here just previously. We started a workshop in 2019 on how to use crumbed rubber in products, and we were really scratching our heads. We couldn't even think of too many big products, and it's taken us until now, we're still not across the line to put rubber coping into train stations, and we may not cross that line, but we're giving it a red hot go. We also strategise to put in, and I don't know if everyone quite appreciates this, innovations for materials and products through what we call our design assurance process. So we let all the design engineers do most of the heavy lifting, rather than get to products that have to go through a type approval process, which can be laborious, time-consuming, and all the rest of it. And the most important thing, I think, in general, is creating a partnerships and a sense of collaboration. And we look for all of the actors and participants that help us get there, because we really need to work with them. TSA is one of them, companies such as Rico, Polyrok. I happen to have Matt here as well. On that, and really importantly, create a sense of inevitability. If everyone believes it's going to happen, usually it does. So you can't be too timid with these things. You have to really have a sense of confidence and purpose. And the thing that really drives me the most is that we actually have no time left. We're actually out of time. I mean, people talk about thresholds and time, about doing things because we only have so much time left. I actually think we don't have any time left. So I have a real sense of urgency to act. So that is really a thing for me. And I always look for reasons to do things, and that's one of the things that we generally look for in any of the projects we do. We look for reasons to do them rather than not do them. Thanks, Lissa.
Thank you. Matt, I know you've just come back from an overseas holiday and you might be feeling a little bit jet lagged, but I know also that Polyrok has had an excellent 12 months. Is there some key things, some things that you're really proud of that you'd like to share?
Yeah, look, 12 months ago I joined Polyrok, and there'd been a substantial amount of work and testing and collaboration there that, there's some fantastic results, and, essentially it just really needed to be pushed into the infrastructure market, and given the current global climate position and the fall of red cycle, it made, I guess, everyone's awareness an ample opportunity to, to really push it on major projects where the teams all had an understanding of the issues, probably greater than what they would have previously. Often you find that, although the executive and ecologiQ and there's a lot of support there to go push this in, it doesn't quite see itself make it through the procurement phase. So we focused on trying to remove any of the issues throughout, any of the issues in cost or design and standards. We were able to get the first Vic Roads approval and introduction of soft plastic with McConnell Dowell at the Western Program Alliance. And then I think it was the same day later that afternoon, the Southern Program Alliance started putting in at Glen Huntly. So, the introduction and just breaking into the Vic Road standards, really helped push things along this past 12 months, so much so that we're able to really push and shine a light on the, substantial benefits of Polyrok in construction and as a, sustainable solution, ongoing solution for recycled plastic that's otherwise wasted. But yeah, the past 12 months between collaborating with everyone that's currently put so much time and effort into the introduction of recycled materials and otherwise wasted materials into infrastructure, it's opened up such a network that, we've been able to really expand and get the capital to increase dramatically our capacity. We've purchased another 5 machines that have arrived in Victoria and hopefully will be commissioned in the next 3 weeks. So we'll be able to essentially repurpose, recycle 4 tonne per hour and 40,000 tonne per annum, just alone with that. And, we've continued to advance the machines and bring down the cost and the sustainable or the energy, lower the energy that's consumed throughout the process. It's been a very exciting year, and we'll continue to really push now as well with the support of the alliances and ecologiQ and all the work previously done. I think we'll see projects start to, well, they're already implementing into design. We've got council underwriting it in the city of Frankston, and I think it might be over in Deer Park that they're mandating or they're underwriting it in design the use of Polyrok. So, that's really going to set the standard to continually introduce different replacements and sustainable solutions.
Thank you. Noting that Bo said, time is out, we've run out. John, I'm interested in your thoughts. It's often in the rail space where we face maybe some more barriers, more of the no thank yous. Why do you think that is, and how can we solve that?
I wouldn't necessarily characterise it as a reluctance as such, right? The railways throughout history have always recycled. If you go to any of the old suburban stations, you often see bits of old running rails sticking out of the ground. Now they're being reused as handrail posts, fence posts, painted bollards in car parks or concourse areas, and small retaining walls. So you can see there is a history of reusing materials on the railways. We still have 40-year-old procedures and specifications from the Public Transport Corporation days. They set out how you assess and categorise materials for recycling and reuse. So it is something the railways have done historically, but we do need to run trains every day, and we need to do that safely and reliably. And the operators and infrastructure managers will have safety management systems set up to ensure that they meet their obligations in accordance with the law to ensure that all risks have been reduced so far as is reasonably practicable. Now, I can understand why the need for the operators to challenge suppliers and projects to keep that responsibility. I can understand how that could be seen as hesitancy or reluctance, but the history behind all that, going back through generations, you can see materials have been reused. There is a way of doing this, and we need to do more of it, and we need to do it with, newer materials, different products.
So we have new materials coming online. We've got some products that you were talking about. It's the risk profile that is often espoused as the barrier. So how do we manage those risks, and what progress can we make in there? And I think I'm probably pitching that question to you, Bo and John.
You can go first.
Thank you. Wherever practicable, new rail assets should fail safe is the overriding principle. Like the modern signalling and train control systems will do this. If something pops, something goes wrong, the train stop, a check is done to ensure it's still safe, the train start again. Some of the older assets we've got in the corridors do the opposite. The potential there could fail, and they could deteriorate and then fail, and they need to be managed and inspected and maintained to ensure they don't reach an unsafe condition. Now, a hesitancy would be more of a challenge to try and introduce a product that had that potential failure mode, that needs inspecting and needs maintaining to ensure the safe condition can be maintained. We would have to ensure the safety management system is appropriate for that use. The ideal product, look, the ideal new product doesn't fail at all, right? Or it's built so far away from the operating railway that it fails safe, or it fails in a manner that we get some warning, we can see it deteriorate before something pops. They would be the ones that would have the easier and quicker assurance path, and that's as it should be, you know. Now, we can look at products within the track structure, within what we call the danger zone, within 3 metres of the track. They would have a higher onus, and, you know, as they should.
Bo, before you answer, obviously in LX projects, there's a huge concrete requirement, and design life of concrete is a problem, and getting those standards changed could be difficult. Is there anything you would add in terms of the risk profile around the concrete use?
Sure. Well, first of all, we try not to pick the most risky element to do our experimental stuff on. But occasionally it does happen, but usually you wouldn't. You would pick things, I mean, as with most things that are standards driven, they're also performance driven. So having said that, we don't have a lot of time, we do try and do step by step sort of progress towards getting either higher recycled product content or something that's new. Say, for example, with Polyrok, the issues that we face with standards is that, and this is probably across the board, it's the general point to make about a lot of the recycled products that come into materials, either as an ingredient or as a product or by itself, is that standards aren't necessarily written with those materials in mind. So as an example, something that's always been made from concrete, not surprisingly, everyone expects whatever it is to behave like concrete. And then if you go and make it out of another material, the standards or the tests that have quite reliably for 50, 100, 20, whatever years, being able to say that that's good or not good, don't apply. Unfortunately, we're still held to those tests. So as an example, with rubber coping that we're working on at the moment, a number of the is it worthwhile, is it good, does it perform, relate to how you expect concrete to perform. We're not asking the right questions. Now, I think part of the sort of like there's a fork in the road, if you like, between things that you can put through a normal assurance process and you can get normal engineers, normal standards to assess it, and it'll be perfectly fine. But when you get into a little bit more esoteric territory, it's problematic, because that's where you really need that partnership and that collaboration, because you sort of all have to look at each other and go, is this going to be okay? And you all kind of have to go, yeah, collectively, we can make it okay, but all you need is one or two, and they're not malicious or bad actors, they're just people that don't quite sit around the same end goal with that in mind, and they're just playing safe and they can derail that. So it doesn't make it higher risk, it just means that the processes that we have in place historically, they haven't been set up to deal with these new materials. So I think that's one of the things we need to address, is new processes and potentially new actors in the processes that have as their responsibility helping these new materials, new products have a more smooth, more speedy pathway.
And certainly in our pre-panel, we just had a little chat outside, we were talking about how all of the actors in the, from the planning through to delivery, through to operations and maintenance, we all need to come together to actually accept some of these risks and accept the changes. And that's perhaps a little gap at the moment. We're busy in our own patches. John?
If I could add something to that as well, yeah. What does help speed the conversation up and the process is looking at it from a systems engineering perspective. Like the railways have always relied on a number of engineering disciplines acting in perfect harmony at all times to ensure things keep running. Now, if a product or item is looked at singularly on its own and not looked at as part of a system, it then takes longer to answer the questions you inevitably get from the maintainers or the operators accepting the risk. So if a consideration up front is given to how does this fit into the system, how does the system work, how are the risks currently being controlled in that system, that just informs the discussion and the work you need to then do going forward, you know. It's looking at it from more holistically rather than looking at things separately.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it'd be, you know, infrastructure at the moment, especially Victoria, with the sheer amount of work and the ability to repurpose and recycle material and introduce it. You know, it's a perfect platform where, you know, I'm quite hesitant to send the material to residential or domestic projects and even commercial projects for the reason that, you know, it's very difficult to ensure the same, you know, environmental, safety, quality factors are adhered to. You know, infrastructure outside of the immediate danger zone or the rail corridor and, you know, structural elements, I think there needs to be a bit of a review or a team put together to be able to say what's structurally, you know, got high risks or is higher risks than others. You know, if you have a look, for example, in comparison to the Australian standards, in which, you know, a 56-storey building that's got suspended slabs and people, you know, and potential lives at risks, versus a footpath that, you know, can't collapse and potentially kill anyone, and you're adhered to, you know, one of the highest standards, you know, potentially around the world. It makes it very difficult, so it's very challenging for projects, especially with the fast-paced nature that these projects operate, to either know themselves how to push it through the design phase and how to and get it within the timeframes required for their projects. You know, we're lucky enough, Polyrok, that we've been able to prove it, and we're starting to see it introduced into design. But you know, there's a small window, but a big window and a big opportunity where we know that we can introduce mass different materials, trial. You know, for example, the North East Link, you know that, say if you're trialling in a pavement layer that the subgrade's built to a certain spec, it's safe, that it's going to be embodied, encapsulated, that it's going to be supervised for decades to come. And, you know, it's a perfect platform to trial, you know, in areas that aren't risks to the environment or, you know, lives, so.
And you've mentioned, well, you mentioned some of the successes from Polyrok before, and you've just talked about some of those tactics to getting to where you are. Is there anything else in the process to navigating an idea from, you know, the little germ into reality? Yeah,
so that was, you know, when I come across Polyrok, you know, it was all there, and I was very surprised why, you know, it wasn't quite more widely used or recognised. And I'm sure it's somewhat on the verge, but even with, you know, the approvals, it was still quite difficult. So, you know, we did, I guess, a bit of a 360 analysis and went back to collecting the material, processing it, and seeing what issues along the way from, you know, the concrete suppliers and adding it in, what challenges they had that might throw out the cost or make them reluctant to mainstream it more, as well as look to solve any of their issues. For example, Boral, the Polyrok was clogging their filters in their washout bay where they wash out the algae and recycle the water. And we come up with a quick $1,500 East-West engineering just biofilter system that was able to separate the aggregate, leave the aggregate clean there, ready to be reintroduced, remove the slurry and, you know, not clog their filters, and then be able to put the clean water back in, you know, and removing all the little, I guess, issues, safety, environmental quality, and any risks and costs, you know, really aided in being able to drive the price down, which is a big factor, and show, you know, that there is, it's not as daunting for these projects, you know, so whatever the issue were, we were able to reach out to ecologiQ. There's a great support team, and ACOM, and you know, try and navigate our way through the process. And doing so now, you know, it's opened up the opportunity to meet so many people with so many great ideas, like Polyrok, that, you know, are somewhat similar in testing and you know, are quite easy to introduce. So actually navigating the whole way through that process is quite a challenge, and that's something that we'll look to continue to do, is aid those people to get it through, because, you know, unless you know, we're lucky enough that we had the ability to continually pull it through, and our relationships with a lot of the contractors where a lot of people don't. And, you know, unfortunately, no one does want to particularly wear the cost, and a lot of these innovative ideas, you know, they're unable to complete a lot of the testing, or and have, you know, they don't know the right people to go to, or, you know, how to navigate through a Vic Roads test independently, and meet the standards required. So, yeah, I think they're probably showing the process, or having, you know, a team dedicated to aiding people with innovative ideas, and supporting the introduction into, you know, projects probably from more of a central aspect, in which, you know, yeah, they're supported right through, and it's then given on to projects, rather than them having to personally try win each job to try prove it. And you know, if the collaboration's able to continue and grow, I believe it'll be a lot easier, you know, with the support network that I've found, to navigate these materials in.
John, I can see that you're excited to respond to some of that.
It was joining a bit of what Matt said about the testing, and what Bo mentioned about the standards. It would be, if we're looking at a new material that isn't covered adequately or described properly by the appropriate standard, we would need to test. Now, it's what form that testing takes. You know, you could do factory testing, you could do bench testing, you can do stuff off-site. You then may use the results of that to do an in-service trial, actually on the railway, at a station, at a suitable location. The key bits of getting the in-service trial right is ensuring there's pre-agreement on the pass-fail criteria. What is it you're trialling, and why are you trialling it? It wouldn't be good enough to just say, oh, we're just going to trial it to see if it works, right? The railways have to be confident enough that it's safe enough and reliable for it to go in the field trial in the first place. What the operators will then use the trial for is to ensure, A, it validates the performance, but it also ensures they've got all the right procedures and protocols in place to handle a network-wide rollout. So you can scale up half the trial when it's successful, and then go across the network with it. So it's a way of just testing it in service to make sure the internal processes are ready for it. So it's certainly, without time, none of that can happen. You know, I think my experience is that you know if a material's right for the railway if it's survived 2 hot summers. Until then, you're still looking at it, you know.
Lissa, thanks, John. I totally agree with that. You don't want it to be failing in a railway situation, for sure. I was just going to add, and this is a little bit of a spruik, I guess, for ecologiQ as well, and it certainly brings in Matt's Polyrok as well, is a successful structure, and I couldn't help but noting the question down there, is there a particular approach or structure that would help in innovation? And I'm not quite addressing the question, but I'll give it a go anyway. There's a concrete working group that is overseen by ecologiQ, and it is literally an innovation and implementation group that looks at not just recycled materials, but reducing emissions in concrete. And that particular group, the reason it's successful is because it has a loose governance structure, but a very clear mission statement. And it has the entire suite of stakeholders that you would find in a project, even though the group doesn't have a project. It's got a mission, and the mission is recycling materials and reducing emissions. And so the key element there is that it's got everyone from the pure academic all the way through to I'm the person that makes, for example, say Polyrok. And the reason it works is because everyone understands their part, and it is part of a loose program where we're very clear on what the outcomes are, and it's very much looking towards the sort of inevitable decline in some of the materials that make up low emission concrete, slag and fly ash, which you could argue they are definitely waste products, but they will run out shortly as we stop producing blast furnace steel and then coal-fired power stations. Now, so we're looking at calcined clay, for example, which you could very easily argue is a waste material. It's produced, say, for example, by Alex Fraser when they wash their aggregates, also by Repurpose It when they wash and they get the sand out of it. They're left with literally hundreds of thousands of tonnes of clay. And it's not no value, but it's relatively low value. It's clay. Now, we're looking at calcining that clay, turning it into a cementitious material. Now, whenever that turns out into a bit of concrete, everyone's going to be scratching their heads because it doesn't quite have the right standards in place to measure it. So we're looking at a testing, standards, trialling, validation, implementation, and that includes the supply chain. It all falls apart if the supply chain's not there. And also, just to the earlier point about risk, let's not forget the people that are supplying all these materials, they take a huge risk because they've got a business, and if whatever the venture is fails, if the risk is big enough and they've made too much of an investment, that business could be gone. So we really need to, certainly from a contractor point of view, we're very much aware of the fact that we bring along a great idea, and if it's got risk associated, we have to reward the suppliers, and it's kind of like a reward, it's probably the wrong word, but we have to reward them by actually using the material. If we don't, what's the point?
So how do you think the procurement models then help get into the actual supply chain? What's the easiest pathway there?
That's a complicated answer, I guess. So first of all, knowing that you must use, so the Recycle First program is really important. You can write that into as a requirement into contracts. Even if you must not do it, even if it's not a must statement, it's a very strong driver. It's also quite well understood that in order to achieve materials reductions targets, you need to be addressing that using recycled materials. You know what materials will contain the highest levels of recycled material. So you look at those contracts and you incorporate that into your RFQs, so your request for quotations, which then roll into contracts, and then that rolls into having your site engineers not screwing it up by ignoring targets. And so there is a long chain. Sorry, I'm failing here. There's a long chain of a set of hurdles that you need to make sure you don't trip over as you go towards implementation. So it's not just the procurement. Sorry, it's not just procurement. It's also then making sure that you actually do what your procurement model says you're going to do, and then you implement it on site and deliver it.
Okay, thank you. For a complex question, you answered it pretty easily. And there's nothing on here that's going to throw you. Look, we've only got a few minutes left, so I think, Victoria is not alone in this transition. Everyone's worked in other jurisdictions, and Matt, you've just, you said you've opened something up in Ireland. So what's happening outside of Victoria that we should be standing up and taking notice of? This is for all of you.
I can go.
Say again?
You go, John.
I'll answer it first, as long as my mic's working. The one observation I had, right, and it's kind of in a way of joining the dots up, right? The large percentage of the operating network we have in Victoria, the track is ballasted, right? It's traditional ballasted track. Now, maintaining and renewing ballasted track must have a large carbon footprint in terms of its whole of life cost of carbon. Now, in Victoria, it feels to me like we've made a really good start. We are looking at low carbon concrete sleepers. We've got people looking at plastic sleepers. We've got plastic sleepers in the track at the moment on trial. We're looking at recycling ballast and screening ballast and reusing it on the railway. We're looking at all sorts of recycled materials for rail formation and capping layers. Now, I wondered if we had a protocol or a direction from government, state, whoever, that challenged all of us to look at a whole of life cost of this in terms of the carbon use, then possibly we would actually do away with those separate bits. We'd replace the sleepers, the ballast, and the recycled material with like a direct fixed ballastless track form. Something what I had in mind was similar to what the Melbourne Tunnel project's just built underground in Melbourne. If you imagine that, but with a low carbon equivalent concrete, possibly a Polyrok or something like that. I mean, that would massively reduce the whole of life carbon footprint of the asset. Now, to do that, we would need to ensure that we've got the rail operators' policies lined up with the state projects requirements and the recycle first policies. You know, I think there's bigger benefits to be made if it can be looked at holistically on basically whole of life use of carbon would be the point I'm trying to make.
And on that, you know, I think probably some central communication would be key. Like there is a lot of solutions. You know, for example, Polyrok in concrete is only one, but we were able to prove, you know, pretty much every VR mix that's predominantly used in concrete up to 80% cement replacement, and you know still utilise it in precast manufacturing, so I was able to achieve early strength and you know achieve essentially you know every type of possible application it could for structural concrete. Asphalt as well, you know, developing currently the testing and approvals for Polyrok in asphalt. And then, you know, we have massive success with companies like Replads, for example, the introduction of, or the, you know, the amount of Polyrok and recycled plastic in which they use. I think, you know, there are so many products that are developed, ready to go now in so many different ways that, you know, the ability to potentially send out a newsletter with all these products that are currently available, proven, tested to give people awareness, you know, whether it be a civil engineer ordering pit and pipe, you know, knowing that they can go to SVC and you know, it's low carbon and has recycled material, they'll normally go, you know, and try to do the right thing, as long as there isn't a substantial cost difference, as well as the potential rewards for using, you know, different materials or products in which their company, alliance, or you know, project will get in turn, because you find that, yeah, that there's probably a lot more information that could be out there that's readily available, you know, to say that these products are good to go, whether it be the bollards, you know, concrete mixers, asphalt mixers, plastic seats, and that are ready to go there now. People will try to do the right thing if they know it. So probably, you know, updating the market of what's available, because even though, you know, there is plenty of products there that MTM won't see, because it won't get through the PC or the alliance initial procurement stage, and all MTM would, you know, see a product that's safe and sustainable and what they ideally want, they're not getting an opportunity to see it.
Yeah, look, there's heaps of materials there, but I actually think you're sort of like, it depends on how far back you can step in the process, because I think a lot of the problems that we're sort of confronting are precisely because we've been really focused on the problem. And it's kind of like the problem that we're confronting is so big that you need to sort of like step back in the same scale. You really need to take that, I don't know, very, very elevated view of the problem and act in an elevated way. We can't be acting in silos, because that's kind of how we got to this point in the first place. So we can't replicate that thinking. So I was in a discussion just a few days ago about, and it was through this concrete working group, which is bringing some really interesting sort of thinking to the table. And it was really about saying, look, projects or programs, you know, they've got these massive contracts and they've got millions of dollars of incentive to be paid for innovation, introduction of good ratings, whatever the rating system is, reductions in energy, reductions in materials. But they're still, having just said how great a program is, it's still a program. Now we've got half a dozen programs in Victoria alone, never mind Australia. So how's this for thinking? If you allow the programs to claim for innovation, even though they're collaborating outside with other programs. So you might still be able to claim for, say, concrete innovation, plastics innovation, polymer innovation, whatever it happens to be, if it's done as part of a collaborative group. And as part of that group, you're actually able to claim it for your program. So you can still get rewarded for it. It's not like, well, no, you did that outside, so that doesn't actually, you can't peg that. We need to, I think, make some more holistic, broader thinking, and this is kind of like at the Kevin Devlin scale, I think, not our scale, but we need to be addressing it at a bigger scale to help the people that are sort of down at our level, at the sort of more tactical level, to be able to be freer to act. Because a lot of our actions are constrained by, contracts, commercial agreements, NDA, a whole bunch of things, and we're forced to act in a sort of a smaller pond. So I think the more that we can have expanded ability to act, the better the outcomes will be, and the less fearful we'll be of not earning our reward or not, meeting the contract. And I think it's just a bit of a mindset change, I think, in some ways, and that I think will just help everyone. It doesn't invalidate the standards. You still need standards. You still got to have safety. You still got to have risk mitigation. It doesn't take anything of that away, but it just elevates the thinking, I think. And I think that's kind of what we need.
Okay. We have a couple of questions from the audience, so thank you for putting those through. We've only got a few minutes, so there was two there that I'd like to ask. I'm client side. What can we be doing better to make these innovations and outcomes easier? And I'd ask Bo and Matt to respond to that quite quickly, though.
Yeah, sorry. It would probably, just, very quickly, unless you're cheaper, it's not considered, and it's immediately rejected. If there's, any pressure on resources, or if there's anything that makes it more difficult than what's readily available on the market, it struggles to get in. So it's probably, the acknowledgement of any innovation put forward, put right up to, the executive leadership teams, and the people that essentially can say, let's see the value in it and see if we can even help develop it to reduce the cost. But, a lot of products are there ready to go. It's just bringing them in and, ensuring that, that the communication is all the way through aligned, that, the alliances, the government, everyone wants the same thing, getting everyone in the same room, and right down to the subcontractor and suppliers can very quickly solve and see things introduced, even so much that standards at the moment aren't a massive issue. It's just navigating around it with the right people.
Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Bo or John?
I was just going to say very quickly, I think first thing, being asked to innovate and asked to improve. I agree the thing on cost, maybe the cost time isn't quite adequately described. What's cheaper today is like knowing the cost of everything but the value of nothing. And it's sort of like, so we need to really understand the value timescale. That's probably it.
Yeah, just following on from that, I think that's possibly what we would need to look at going forward, is whether we've got enough of a handle of the value of the sustainable products, the carbon footprint, and equate that and balance that with any additional capex, particularly for the projects. Further inform that through service life, carbon benefit as well for the operators. Now, I don't know if we have that in place already. I might have just reinvented the carbon tax. But I think that's possibly what it needs from a whole of life. Yeah.
I was just going to add there is kind of a silver bullet, which is a cost on carbon, and I know New South Wales is about to introduce it in a shadow sense. I think it's about $123 a tonne they're putting in. I think it's probably inevitable here, but certainly we tie ourselves in knots to try and whittle down to a solution. And I think a price on carbon, whether it is an actual one which someone actually pays, or whether you use it as a benchmark for success, is enormously helpful, because it very neatly summarises a lot of otherwise very difficult problems, and it forces people like contractors to be very, very clear on quantities, costs, and it just forces systems to change and improve.
There is one last question, and I hope the audience can indulge this because we are running out of time, but kind of a call to action. How do we get people to be bold and just make these changes so that we get the outcomes? But you've only got 15 seconds each, so.
Look, I've been bold in, I guess, the way I've introduced things. I've gone and done things without approval and then gone and got them later where we know. There's projects with a lot of plastic bags I don't know.
Yeah.
But
do it and ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah, but look, and with the support network, even through ecologiQ, I've been able to do that, and then say, we know it's safe. We're going to do it and see if we can catch the test ups. But it's just ensuring that, I guess, that you can be bold and not undo what you're trying to achieve from an environmental and safety perspective.
Yeah, for me, all parties on the project need the correct drivers to push the behaviour to work together to improve the sustainability and reduce the carbon. Now, if we all work together on that and view it as a whole of system, that's the way we would gain the biggest benefit. But it's it's a global problem, right? It's a responsibility of everyone. And just touching back on the railways would surely be part of a solution to what we're looking at with global warming.
I would say be confident and make sure you work for a company that allows you to express that confidence.
Very good. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And if the audience can also put your hands together to thank the panel.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lisa and our panel. Wow, what a holistic, fantastic discussion. We've covered so many different aspects of this opportunity that is in front of us. We are at that important point in the middle of the day for lunch and networking. I'm sure you're ready for it. We're going to be back here at about 2 o'clock. I would like to again encourage you to visit the Trade Hall Theatre and get to know some of our exhibitors a little bit better, see the products, see what they've been up to, and of course also learn and listen to their stories, to the kinds of barriers that they have overcome, to share with them in their journey, and of course this journey on procurement for the big build projects. Don't forget also, if you have a moment, to step into the micro factories as well, to look at all the fantastic, of course, products that are indeed possible and are happening. You can start to see what is possible, start to, I guess, think about what you might have considered as impossible, but now coming to life. And all of this can come through with our imaginations, and of course, when we start to look at waste as resources. So enjoy the afternoon, have a great time networking, and we'll see you back here at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much. Thank you.